Should Hendon Hooker be getting a look at the Heisman? It's early in the season, but he's without a doubt one of college football's top players. So I'm going to give into the argument a little bit for you guys here today. Should Hendon Hooker be considered a Heisman contender? We'll talk about it all here on a Thursday, Locked On Vols.
You are Locked On Vols, your daily podcast on the Tennessee Volunteers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is good, everybody? Welcome into it. Happy Thursday, and this is your Locked On Vols, your team every single day, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Subscribe, follow the show on YouTube. We continue to just get more subscribers every single day. Can't thank you enough for that. And, of course, you can listen to it wherever you find your podcast. All right, so got a fun show here today. I'm your host, Eric Kane. You can find me on Twitter at _Kaner. And, of course, you can find the show on Twitter at Locked On Vols. I write for the VolQuest.com website. That's the On3 affiliates for covering Tennessee. And a lot of you guys, and it's not just you guys. I mean, there's been ample articles since the Florida game about it and all that. But should Hendon Hooker be getting some Heisman love? I kind of gave my 2 cents on that. I think I guess it was probably Twitter Tuesday show earlier in the week. But I'm going to spend some more time on that here in segment one, because obviously there's an argument to be made, and I'll give my take on that and some of the biggest competitions here in the early season. Josh Heupel and some players took part in a media availability, the lone media availability of the week. That was yesterday. We'll hear from him and a player or two. And then John Garcia, a little recruiting talk here in segment number 3, all that and more on a Thursday show. So, as you see in the bottom ticker here, should Hendon Hooker be getting some early season Heisman love? On Twitter Tuesday, I said that I treat the Heisman voting and the Heisman conversation much like the college football playoff rankings, that when that first one comes out, midway, through the season or whatever, then we can start keeping track of this. But you're 4 games into a season. You're not even into the heart of your conference schedule yet. Sure, Tennessee's played a 1 conference game. Sure, some of these other people getting the Heisman love, they played a conference game, maybe 2. But it's very much early in the season. There's been a lot of games against, MAC opponents in that case. Tennessee's played 2 MAC opponents. There's been a whole lot of that here in the early season. So you always got to take things with a grain of salt. But what Hendon Hooker's done, so far, it shouldn't be, shoved behind the woodshed. I mean, you should talk about it. You should celebrate it. He's had a really, really good season. Hendon Hooker, so far this season, 1,193 passing yards through 4 games. That's really, really good. He's had 2 games of over 300 yards passing. And keep in mind, against Ball State and against Akron, Hendon Hooker played just the first series of the second half, and that's all she wrote. So really, he hadn't played a whole lot of football. He's missed about 4 quarters of football so far this season because Tennessee was winning in blowouts. So 1,193 passing yards in 4 games. That's really good. Hendon Hooker is completing 71.7% of his passes. That is very good. He's thrown for 8 touchdowns, no interceptions. He is a 90.3 QBR. He has 35 rushing attempts, 175 rushing yards, and 3 touchdowns on the ground. So on the season, Hendon Hooker has 11 touchdowns and no interceptions. He does have 1 turnover. He fumbled the football on 4th and 8 against Florida, but he was being sacked, and so really it wasn't a costly turnover, but still, you want to hang on to the football. I get that. But Hendon Hooker's playing really well. He is playing very, very well. How does that stack up against some of the others who are playing very, very well here in the early season? Well, you got the quarterbacks who are on really good teams who are going to be ahead of the pack because they're undefeated right now. They're going to be leading that conversation all year long. Who are they? Well, C.J. Stroud of Ohio State, of course, really, really talented player. 1,222 passing yards so far, a 70.5 completion percentage, 16 touchdowns, 1 interception, a 95.4 QBR. He has 1 rush, and it was a 48-yard touchdown. So a pretty solid start for C.J. Stroud, no doubt about it. He's going to win a lot of football games. He's going to play a high-level football all year long, right? That's Ohio State. That's the expectation. What about the reigning Heisman Trophy winner in Bryce Young? Well, for Alabama, 1,029 passing yards, a 68.6 completion percentage, 13 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, 84.4 QBR. He has 150 yards on 16 attempts, 2 touchdowns on the ground. Caleb Williams is the other one that kind of in this plateau of you got 3 above and then everybody else, behind, at least in the conversation. Caleb Williams, formerly of Oklahoma, now at USC, of course, with Lincoln Riley. 1,054 passing yards on the season, 65% completion percentage, 9 touchdowns, no interceptions, 85.1 QBR. 36 rushing attempts, 100 yards, 2 touchdowns. So right then and there, Hendon Hooker's numbers are better than both Caleb Williams and Bryce Young. CJ Stroud is better pretty much across the board than Hendon Hooker, but still, he's better than Bryce Young and Caleb Williams, 2 of the 3 who get all the conversation for Heisman preseason and so far into the season. What about some other players who are really standing out, really off to good starts to their football campaigns? Sam Hartman missed the first game of the season, but in 3 games, 962 yards passing, 64% completion, 13 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. He has 22 attempts, 33 yards on the ground. Sam Hartman's a good football player over at Wake Forest. Michael Penix Jr. is having a great year. 1,388 passing yards at Washington, 64.3 completion percentage, 12 touchdowns, 1 interception, 82.6 QBR. Former Tennessee commit, Michael Penix Jr., that it never really worked out at Indiana the way that you wanted it to, but since he's transferred, there you go. It looks really, really good. Jalen Daniels, surprise of college football so far, looking really, really good for Kansas. 890 passing yards, 71% completion, 11 touchdowns, 1 interception, 98.0 QBR. That's really good. What about on the ground? 38 attempts, 320 yards, and 4 touchdowns. Kansas is, I understand that some early season success. Kansas is not going to make the college football playoff. You know what I'm trying to say? I mean, it is what it is, right? But that shouldn't go unnoticed, what Jalen Daniels is doing so far. He is having a fantastic season. Drake May over at UNC is having a good year. 1,231 passing yards, 69% completion percentage. Nice. 16 touchdowns, 1 interception, 88.8 QBR, 39 attempts, 183 yards on the ground, and a touchdown. So those are the quarterbacks. You know, it's a quarterback award. It always has been, right? The Heisman Trophy winner should have been Will Anderson Jr. a season ago, but you got to give it to a quarterback, right? You just got to. I mean, it's pretty much a law, right? It is what it is. There's one running back that's kind of in this conversation right now. Can't pronounce his name. Muhammad Ibrahim of Minnesota. Apologies there. Butchered his names. 89 rushing attempts, 567 yards on the ground, averaging 6.4 yards per carry, 8 touchdowns. So Hendon Hooker stacking up with the best of them in college football right now. Again, this is Hendon Hooker stats. 1,193 yards, 71.7 completion percentage, 8 touchdowns, no interceptions, a 90.3 QBR. On the ground, 35 attempts, 175 yards, and 3 touchdowns. Like I said on Tuesday, Hendon Hooker, and like I said on Monday to open the show, Hendon Hooker is one of college football's best right now. No doubt about it. But for Hendon Hooker, in my opinion, to be in a Heisman conversation, first and foremost, you've got to knock off one of the big boys. You got to. You got to take down Alabama. You got to take down Georgia. One of the two. You've got to. And obviously, you need to go on the road and handle business against LSU. The Heisman, and we can have a debate on this in the offseason, but the Heisman, it's going to go to a player that's the most valuable player. And I understand that, not the MVP. We're talking Heisman here, but it is what it is. It's going to go to the most valuable player on a team with a really good record. That's just what it's going to be. So for Tennessee, or for Hendon Hooker to be in this conversation, in my opinion, Tennessee needs to be 10-2. Tennessee, and for Hendon Hooker to really be in this conversation, Tennessee needs to knock off one of the big boys. So could Hendon Hooker be in this conversation, still losing to Georgia, still losing to Alabama? Absolutely. Go take care of business against LSU. Take care of business against Kentucky at home. Don't slip up anywhere else. There's your 10-2, right? There's your 10-2. Could Hendon be in this conversation, still putting up all these numbers with 9-3? Sure, but he wouldn't be a finalist. He wouldn't be a finalist. He wouldn't go to New York. You got to knock off one of the big boys. Is it possible? Absolutely, it's possible. Will it happen? I don't know. You're asking me today, will Tennessee beat Alabama or Georgia? I'll say no. But I'm a realist. I shoot you straight. It is what it is. Is it possible? Absolutely, it's possible. With this offense, anything's possible. And that is not cliche. I truly believe that. And what's this offense got that's going right now? Quarterback in Hendon Hooker being fantastic on the season. So, should he be getting some love early in the season? Absolutely. Is Heisman talk for anybody 4 games into a season premature? 100%. But Hendon Hooker is one of college football's best right now. There is no doubt about it. All right. Oh, It's fun. You enjoy talking about good quarterback play. Am I right? Am I right? Yes. Really, really looking forward to catching up with John Garcia in segment number 3, a little Tennessee recruiting. But first, we're going to get into a media availability from Wednesday. We'll hear from Josh Heupel and Ramel Keaton. But I do want to remind you guys about BetOnline. BetOnline is your number one source for all your football betting information this season. Find all the latest player developments, the team matchups, the news, the podcast, the in-depth articles and analysis anywhere you can find on anything you want, right? And as always, BetOnline remains your continued source for all your sport wagering information, live betting, and up-to-minute scores for every single sport out there. The fastest and easiest way to check in on all your favorite games and events, including Major League Baseball, the playoffs right around the corner. We are in the home stretch. The Atlanta Braves trying to take it to the New York Mets and get that, what is that, a 6th straight NL East title? We'll see. But we're in the home stretch of Major League Baseball, but also MMA, boxing, golf, whatever you want. Head on over to the website today. That's BetOnline to use your mobile device. Learn about all the latest trends and all the action. BetOnline, it is where the game starts. Welcome back into your Thursday edition of Locked On Vols. I am your host, Eric Kane. So glad that you guys are electing to spend part of your day with us here on Locked On Vols. We are cruising through the bye week. We'll be back to football and a big-time trip to LSU next week for the Tennessee Volunteers. All right, we got John Garcia, SI, talking recruiting coming up in segment 3. But I want to remind you guys that Tennessee did have a media availability, the only one of this week, and some good stuff in there. You know, I'm not going to play a whole lot of audio and video, but, this is going to be a rather short segment. But there was some good stuff in there. You know, Josh Heupel got out there and he didn't give any updates on injuries. Of course, he was asked about Cedric Tillman, Dylan Sampson, Warren Burrell, D. Williams. You know, he's not going to answer those. That's just not his style, and you can't blame him, right? I mean, college football does not have an injury report. College football should have an injury report, especially with sports gambling out there right now. I mean, how in the world do you not have an injury report? It's just got to be, a probable, a questionable, a doubtful, an out, right? Probable, questionable, doubtful, and out. And you can skew that a little bit, right? But in the NFL, you have that. And in the NFL, you get fined if you're listed as doubtful and you play. I mean, it just kind of is what it is. But isn't the meaning of doubtful like you probably won't play, but there's a chance? There's a chance. It baffles me now in the world of sports gambling that we don't have an injury report. But nonetheless, Josh Heupel doesn't have to tell you anything, and you can't blame him, right? He's not going to say anything. He didn't give any updates on Cedric Tillman, on D. Williams, on Warren Burrell, on Dylan Sampson, saying that essentially we'll have to see where they are when they get on the grass next week, or this week and day by day. If you're asking me right now, I don't think Warren Burrell will play. I think Dylan Sampson will play. I think it's probably a little too soon for Cedric Tillman. I like it more of the Alabama week. And then Warren Burrell? I don't think Warren Burrell will play. So I don't think Tillman will play. I don't think Burrell will play. I think Sampson would play. And we'll see. We'll see about D. Williams. I think he's close. I think this bye week's good for him. Both Dylan Sampson and D. Williams did dress out and went through pregame warmups. Even though they were officially listed as out. So that leads me to believe that, you're really close. So we'll see. There's a lot of time between now and then. But, of course, the defense, a lot of questions about the defense, going back and watching tape, what happened. Josh Heupel, what'd you see when you went back and watched the tape defensively? Was it a lot of it? Was it self-inflicted, or is it a tip of the cap to Anthony Richardson? I think it's a little bit of both. Give this a listen from Josh Heupel.
Some of it you got to give him credit, give them credit too. He's a good player and made some plays with his feet and with his arm too. And some of their max protections, they were able to block it up pretty well and give him time to push the football down the field. There's things that we got to do better, starting with some tackling, assignment, understanding. We're not playing with the right angles and technique that maybe allow him to get outside of the pocket. The tackling down the football field at times was not good enough. And then, there's some coverage lapses too, and in what we do, that can be all three levels. It can be obviously our secondary, but our linebackers, and sometimes when we're dropping our front into coverage too, them being in the right spot. It's a combination of all those things that didn't allow us to get us off the field. We enough. We had them in a bunch of second and longs and third and longs too, and we got to take advantage of those situations.
We got to meet with a couple of different players. Javonte Spraggins, who's the SEC Offensive Lineman of the Week. Roman Harrison, defensive lineman. Bryson Eason, who's a defensive lineman. We also got to meet with Ramel Keaton, and we haven't gotten to talk to Ramel Keaton a lot over his Tennessee career, mostly because he's never played a prominent role. But even when we have talked with him a little bit, he's been a man of few words. He's not very outspoken. Um, just to be completely frank with you, he's not been good in media settings. He's not. I thought he was really good yesterday. I do. And obviously he's playing with some confidence right now, but when he speaks, you can sense a sense of maturity there that these kids are here from, anywhere from 4 to sometimes 6 years now in this COVID era. And you really do grow up. You grow up. And I mean, this class of 2019, which is the one where Ramel Keaton was a part of, they've been through a lot. I mean, they really have. Think about it. You came in and your first 2 games of your season, you lost to Georgia State and BYU. And you lose a couple big games, obviously, to Georgia and to Alabama, to Florida. But then you go on some type of little run there and you got confidence building. You pick up a bowl win over Indiana, and then you go into 2020, you pick up the whole 2020 saga is what it is. But then you pick up 2 wins to begin that 2020 season, and then you lose 7 straights, and then you beat Vanderbilt. Boom, 3-7's your record. Obviously, all the turmoil. Jeremy Pruitt's gone, sanctions, this, that, all that, and you bring in new coaching staff, change offensive systems. You surprise a lot of people in year 1. Now here you are in year 2, 4-0, just coming off a major win over Florida. That 2019 class, there's not many left. Go back and look at the rankings. Go check out VolQuest.com and On3 and look at that signing class from 2019. There's not a whole lot that's there anymore. But Ramel Keaton was one of those guys. Let me make sure I'm not getting my years mixed up. No, Ramel Keaton was in that class of 2019. And he's been through a lot. And obviously made the most impressive play of the day, right, with that catch, which was incredible. But he had a big-time reception earlier in that football game where he made a couple guys miss picking up a first down. They went back to him later in that drive after the 43-yard catch. Playing with a lot of confidence right now. Obviously, the team has trust in him as the rotation was just the 3 receivers and the tight ends of the backs. They didn't bring in another wide receiver, which was kind of surprising. But then again, why would you, right? I mean, you're getting good play out of Ramel Keaton. So sense a lot of maturity from him. But his play right now has not come without past struggles. And I don't think Ramel Keaton's an All-American. I don't. I still think there's limitations to his game. But again, I'll pull the thumb, man. I did not think he would be a factor. I did not think he'd be a factor. And he's been giving Tennessee some good minutes. Listen to what Ramel Keaton says right here about his past struggles, watching from the sideline, going through issues with drops and all that type of stuff that's kind of led him to where he is today and obviously benefiting on the field in a big way.
I just prayed, asked God what I should do, and he just showed me what I could do. And I had to self-reflect, I really wasn't working that hard, so I couldn't be mad at me. I was still working, but I wasn't pushing myself to new levels. So I couldn't get mad at the situation, so I just had to readjust and work a little harder so when my opportunity came, I could take advantage of it. But I still learn from watching Sed, watching Devontae Valers. It wasn't nothing bad. I'm still learning, trying to get better from just watching, but you still got to put the work in, so that's what I had to do.
So really good stuff there from Ramel Keaton. Love that story right there, and hopefully when Cedric Tillman gets back, Ramel Keaton can still steal a few snaps every now and again because I think he's earned that, certainly over the last game against Florida. All right, time to get into it. John Garcia, Director of Recruiting for SI. He joins the show. We talked some recruiting here on Locked On Vols when we return. All right, so we're right in the middle of football season, obviously, but recruiting never stops. Dan Mullen didn't know that, but he's no longer coaching, but recruiting never stops, and Tennessee is not stopping recruiting as well. So let's get back to our guy, John Garcia of SI. John, thanks so much for joining us.
Good to be on with you, Eric, as always. And yeah, it's great to go back and forth between the beauty of college football and sprinkle in recruiting thereafter. So it's a great time of year.
No, it really is. And for a team like Tennessee, Tennessee continues to have 21, commitments for this class. And it's really kind of been slow because it did so much work over the course of the spring and the summer for class of 23. And there's some holes to fill, and there's some guys that you want to sprinkle in there and get back on official visits and all that. And 2 of those guys I'll ask you about right now, official visitors for the Florida game, and really talented 5-star defensive lineman David Hobbs, and then a 3-star offensive lineman Vason Lang, who some people think he played tackle. I think he looks more like a guard. What do you like about those 2 guys, and kind of where's Tennessee in that picture?
Well, look, Hobbs can do a little bit of everything, right? And this is part of the reason why his recruitment, I know we'll talk about a few guys who are rising. His recruitment was kind of conventional, I would say, in the middle of the summer months. And then as soon as his performances got out, 6'4", 260, could play inside out, can rush the passer, can absolutely hold his ground on the inside. It's like everybody like reconvened, mainly the SEC reconvened around his game. And that's why he's become one of the more priority D linemen really out of anybody that's still available in this class of 2023. And it looked like he was going to commit. I think he had a commitment date at one point, and then boom, all this interest came back in and he pushed things back. And now all of a sudden it's an SEC, almost free for all for this kid's commitment. So yeah, Tennessee getting him on campus, I thought was a really big deal. North Carolina kid. So naturally, pushing a little bit west is something that Tennessee has always been able to benefit off of in that regard. And distance wise, he'll be closer to home compared to some of these others that are pursuing him here at the end of the 2022 season, I should say. So I think Tennessee's got a great shot in this regard. Don't know if there's an update on that timeline, how soon he may now want to make a decision, but I think him pulling things back late in the summer months really created a whole reset in this recruitment. And I think North Carolina was probably going to land him before that point, but now it's totally wide open and a lot of SEC powers are getting involved. So your guess is as good as mine at this point, but Tennessee definitely helped themselves this weekend by getting him on campus, reestablishing what that Neyland atmosphere could be like. And his family was there with him as well. So they got that on top of the friendly geography that helps in this recruitment.
Yeah, he'll never say this, but I'll go ahead and say it. North Carolina's out. I mean, they're out. Like,
I was leading to that, but yeah.
you got Tennessee, Alabama, you got Georgia that's pushing hard. They're probably third in my opinion, but still, I mean, North Carolina's out, and he's going to go to one of the big boys in the SEC. So we'll see how that plays out. This is one of those things where I love recruiting. You got a guy from Smyrna, Tennessee, 6'1", 210. Not a whole lot of offers, not a whole lot of interest. A commit of Memphis. His name is Aaron Carter. Since about 10 days ago, he's got about 18 Power 5 offers, and we're talking like back-to-back Alabama, Georgia, Ole Miss, USC, Oregon, Tennessee, Auburn. I mean, what a whirlwind, right? Aaron Carter is an athlete, good running back at the high school level. He'll play linebacker in college. Tennessee's obviously in on him. He was on campus against Florida or for the Florida game this past weekend. What do you like about Aaron Carter? What are you hearing about just this new prospect that's kind of jumped on the scene here lately?
Yeah, we're still learning a lot about Aaron, but we love two-way players, guys who have experience at the position they're going to oppose at the next level. So naturally, a great running back should translate to some great linebacker juice, a little Jeremy Banks type of action in what Tennessee has already found success with in this regard. And man, what great fortune to have one of the biggest risers in the South within state lines, right? So when you do start to accelerate and he tries to navigate 18 new scholarship offers. Well, let's start the conversation close to home. Like you said, Smyrna kid. Let's go over to Knoxville for an official visit. And now all of a sudden, all bets are off with the Memphis commitment. Although he's still, I believe, publicly, verbally committed.
He is.
I do think that, that's probably going to change just because of the Power 5 offers that have come in his way, but a natural runner at that size. You could probably rank him as an athlete. He could play some strong safety, some hybrid linebacker, I think, at the next level. A kid, again, we're still looking a whole lot into just from an evaluation standpoint. But every year we get this, right? We get the late riser who plays their way to legitimate SEC or Power 5 recruiting glory, if you will. So I think the timing of capitalizing on the first official after these offers will hold a ton of weight here for Tennessee. Look, in-state kid, easy to get over there with his family, and now starting to match some in-person love with the digital love that he's gotten from a recruiting standpoint. So you could really build an argument for Tennessee right now, even though he's just on the ascent of his, I guess it's not even regional, it's almost a national recruitment out of nowhere.
No, it really is. I mean, he goes coast to coast, north, south. I mean, it's everywhere right now. And again, that's why I love recruiting, seeing some of these stories. Now, Carter was in town for the Florida game. He will be back in town for the Tennessee-Alabama game in 2 weeks. Another prospect who will be in town for Tennessee-Alabama, and then we'll be making a decision publicly, I want to say shortly after being in Knoxville. It's wide receiver Traylon Ray from Tallahassee. Tennessee needs another wide receiver in this class. They kind of pinpointed Traylon Ray, I want to say, really about 2 or 3 months ago, and been keeping up that relationship. What do you like about Traylon Ray? What are you hearing about him?
Yeah, great length. Another guy in the last 6 to 12 months who's played his way to being recruited at a higher clip than he was initially, right? Basketball background, long prospect. And what I like about Tennessee's approach to Ray relative to some of the in-state receivers, by the way, really nice class in the state of Tennessee, right? Receivers in this state, I think, have been really solid. And I think they could have easily, you don't want to say settled, but they could have easily prioritized more of these in-state guys. But you see why Tennessee is on the up and up, right? You still have to push nationally and regionally, despite some great talent and growing talent in the state. So you prioritize Ray, and it starts to get reciprocated. And when you start to get multiple visits from kids who are well outside the region, I think it says a lot about the buy-in for your scheme. And I think when you talk offensive football right now, whether you talk to Traylon Ray or Eric Kane or Paul Feinbaum or whoever, you've got to mention Tennessee early in that conversation. And it wasn't just the 1-year thing, right? I'm sure a contingent of your audience was like, man, well, maybe this was just a novelty because Heupel was new and Hooker was new and this was something different. But obviously it's proven now that it wasn't just that. If anything, it's something that has already been built upon. So I think that's only going to continue to help create that benefit of the doubt with offensive prospects. And when you're a Tallahassee kid who may be looking beyond Florida State, even though they're on the up and up too, I think that also says a lot when you go into enemy territory. And we talked about this, Eric. That's been a theme for Tennessee, right? Going into Mississippi and beating Ole Miss, going into Kentucky and beating Kentucky. So now going into a city where another school lives and potentially winning another battle, I think says a lot about the future of the offense and the maybe widening recruiting footprint, which is got to be exciting for your audience.
Yeah, no doubt. The Florida weekend was just massive for recruiting, and now you're hearing more and more prospects who are going to be in for Alabama. It's continuing to get bigger, and Traylon Ray is going to be a tip of the iceberg in that one. Last question, a two-parter, then we'll get you out of the door, man. I know you're a busy guy. Let's go to 2024. 2 wide receivers I feel like Tennessee's making some moves with here. Mario Craver and MJ Bennett. 2 guys that has been on campus a couple of times. Bennett's, I want to say 3 times since the end of May, since that Rocky Top-a-Palooza. Nonetheless, those guys have been here. They're feeling Tennessee. What do you like about those 2 wide receivers?
Kind of similar, right? Guys who are a little bit smaller, explosive type guys. Think of your Velus Jones type of wideouts who can just do so many things in the passing game. You can hand them the football. They're both experienced returners and just excellent after the catch, whether it's vision, instincts, and the knocks on them are maybe the size, but again, just juniors, guys who will have opportunities to continue to grow into their frame. So naturally, both have become legitimate SEC commodities after huge sophomore campaigns last year. With Craver in particular, got to see him in person a bunch, playing for Clay Chalkville, a state champion program in Alabama, where his buddy Squirrel White was, of course, on the other side, catching touchdowns last year. That stuff resonates. That stuff correlates, especially when you're talking about playing the same position. It's one thing to have a buddy on the roster. Hey, you're a big lineman and I'm 170 pounds. What can we really, find common ground on from a football perspective? But when it's, the guy you looked up to who has a similar skill set at your same position, I think it just hits a little bit harder. That combined with what we talked about with the improving offensive perception for everyone relative to Tennessee football, I think you could position yourself for a lot of great talent, especially like we talked about, offensively, skill position wise, with the quarterbacks that are coming in. It's just an easier sell than it has been in a long time for Tennessee. And if you pull a kid out of Birmingham, it'll continue that other theme we were talking about, going into other folks' backyard. And then Bennett is from South Carolina, so same kind of deal there. Tennessee is a regional power from an offensive recruiting standpoint, and it looks like it's only going to grow beyond the 23 cycle.
John, great stuff, man. Thanks so much. Of course, John Garcia, the director of recruiting over at SI. What's some work you got coming out this week that we can look forward to?
Yeah, well, the month's winding down, right? So we got to refresh those class rankings. Tennessee's off to a great start and look like they'll have a great finish in the 23 cycle. So we'll update those class rankings and keep track of these SI 99 guys that are still available. All that for free there at SI.com.
And of course, you can follow him on Twitter at John Garcia _Jr. John, thanks so much, man.
Always a pleasure, Eric. Take care.
Awesome stuff there from John Garcia, and that will do it here for this edition of Locked On Vols. Guys, can't thank you enough. I'm serious for the continued support. I mean, this is my life. This is my job. I love talking football. I love hanging out with you guys every single day. But, there's guys getting married. Got to put food on the table. Am I right? And your support, subscribing, and interaction, I'm telling you, it means so much. So thank you. It makes a difference. Really, really do appreciate that. Can't wait to preview LSU next week. Really can't wait to preview LSU next week. But we do have another show tomorrow. Special guest joining the show tomorrow, one that I know you guys are going to be jacked up about. So stay tuned for that. All right. That's all she wrote for this one. Thanks so much for making Locked On Vols your first listen. If you haven't already, please subscribe on YouTube. Listen wherever you find your podcast. Apple Podcasts, throw me 5 stars. Leave me a positive review if you would be so kind. And now that you've listened to Locked On Vols for your first listen of the day, check out Locked On SEC with Chris Gordy. Make that your second listen. Right behind Locked On Vols, your first listen each and every day. All right, same time, same place. Pull up a chair. We'll do it again tomorrow. This is Locked On Vols.